We are with a lot of expectations in February, saying that this would be one of the most critical partnerships. And of course, then happened Operation Sindoor, and we've seen since then how the war on tariff has totally kind of changed everything. But I've always said in most of my interviews and my writing also that the most important focus is the business community in India and US. They're very clear, they're very clear that they need to work together to make sure that both US and India are in leadership.
Joining me on Global Pulse tonight is Ravi Karkara. He's the founder of Invest Investors Forum in New York City. He's also the co-founder of Global Air Water Generation Initiative, and he now joins us from New York in the United States. Ravi Karkara, thank you so much for joining me on Global Pulse. Let me begin by asking you, what do you believe are the key factors driving global tech giants like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Intel, and others to commit nearly $70 billion to India's AI and semiconductor ecosystem?
Thank you, Neha, and thank you for having me here. I think you're really asking a very critical question, and for many years I've been also following the India-US journey, and I think we know very clearly one of the most critical pieces which really brings both the countries together is the opportunity of technology. I think, but fundamentally, I think the reality is we need to look at the skilled labor and the skilled personnel that India provides. And I think we've seen it in multiple interviews, be it Satya Nadella, be it Sundar Pichai, or Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos, who have really said that one of the most critical pieces for the next industrial revolution or AI-powered industrial revolution is really having those right skilled workers. Remember that India's, average age is about 28 years, which makes it one of the youngest countries in the world. One is to be youngest. Saudi Arabia is also youngest. But does it mean that they have enough skills to really look at this technology and AI transition that is taking place in the world as we speak right now? I think we've also seen under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, we've seen a fantastic coverage in terms of internet. If you just look at the population of, USA, and you look at the number of people who have internet connectivity in India is 900 million. That's almost 2.5% more. So I think we know very clearly that India's journey towards 2047, all the different things that we've seen the last quarters, 8.2, rate, very clearly telling everybody that in spite of all the tariff war, I would say, back and forth, the geopolitics into the global trade, one thing which is very clear is that Indian consumer, Indian young skilled workforce, and third really is this opportunity to really work in partnership with India to really determine what the next big technology revolution powered by AI will mean to the world. And India has to be in the center of it. So for me, I really look at these numbers. It's great to see these numbers, but remember that we're looking at India by 2030 will be giving an opportunity of 28.8 billion plus in terms of just AI opportunity. We're looking at the data centers, the data that Indian consumers are providing, and this is what really is driving. I think every single technology leader out there saying that we need to invest in India, we need to partner with India, and we need India on the table.
Well, India definitely has a seat at the high table. But let me ask you this, how significant is the fact that these investments are happening despite US President Donald Trump's calls for America first and pressure on tech companies to limit overseas spending?
See, this is somebody again going back to my own life in India, US, the White House Forum or the others. We've seen it from Trump point one to Biden to Obama and now Trump 2.0. We are with a lot of expectations in February, saying that this would be one of the most critical partnerships. And of course, then happened Operation Sindoor, and we've seen since then how the war on tariff has totally kind of changed everything. But I've always said in most of my interviews and my writing also that the most important focus is the business community in India and US. They're very clear, they're very clear that they need to work together to make sure that both US and India are in leadership. So on your point, yes, the tariffs do have an impact, but in the long run, I think when Trump and his administration know they need India on the table, and I think there's a very clear realization, right? If you go to July and you look at August, and this back and forth, the blowing hot, blowing cold, but the business communities always said we will work together. If you recall, President Trump getting all the tech leaders, I think about 3 months ago in White House, and making all this, I think there were mega pledges made by all these CEOs that you see right now in US. But important thing is, if you're going to look at even software development or you look at AI work, you need people with the right skills. Right now, US has a huge gap when it comes to really having those skilled workers. So the H1B1 controversy, people know clearly that we need India skilled workers, and this has been very clear. And I think Trump and his administration, you've seen some of his folks have been now sidelined. You don't see them on the television because he has also been misguided. But I think he's also come to a realization that USA is dawning on a recession, and some of the states, about 11 of them, are already in recession. So he knows that if he really wants to look at, I think the latest number here in US is about 3% inflation, which is totally unexpected, but also predictable, I would say. So I would say very clearly that we are seeing some important actors who really have been working behind the scenes and really making sure that the business community is aligned and very focused on this delivery. And I would say the opportunity that has been provided by India, and also the enabling environment, right? The startup culture, 38th on the list right now in terms of innovation. So I think that's something people are looking at, and we're seeing more investment. And I said this 3 months ago, and I think it was NDTV. I said, 3 months ago, we said, people will invest more in Indian startups when it comes to robotics, when it comes to AI, when it comes to space tech, when it comes to deep tech innovation. And we are seeing those numbers coming in right now.
We are certainly looking at those numbers. Let's, dive deep into them. Microsoft has pledged $17.5 billion, which is their largest Asia investment ever, alongside an earlier $3 billion commitment. What does this scale of investment signal about India's AI readiness and digital infrastructure?
I think this is a very important boost for India's existing, focus. And honestly, I mean, the number sounds very big, but the Indian opportunity runs into hundreds of billions. I would have expected similar to what Jeff Bezos announced, right? We were looking at probably a bigger number. But I think Microsoft and Satya Nadella, if you go back to some of his comments over the last 5 years, he's been very clear. So it's not new to him when he talks about the India opportunity. He's made it multiple times in his visit to India, in his internal town halls and other meetings. He said, we need to work with India. So I think it's an opportunity where I think India needs to also go beyond being just the service provider for the Silicon Valley, to really look at this leadership in terms of AI revolution. Instead of just being reactive, we need to look at more innovation and creation, right? We had DeepSeek coming out of China. We had Perplexity. Arvind is another great example of IIT Chennai, but actually really becoming an entrepreneur here, right? I think that really needs to happen. I think India, with some of the work and investments coming through, has to also now take on the leadership the way they've done on space tech, defense tech, to also create these new AI, defined, technologies. That needs to happen, and I think that's where you will see a lot of money coming in, and there is a huge opportunity. And I think government has done brilliant work. If you look at the Open AI and some of the AI initiatives, including the most recent one focusing on young people to really embrace free skilling on AI, right? And I recall, I was in India about right after COVID or during COVID. And that time, about in 2022 in Delhi, I remember there was a conference with CBSE. I don't know if many of you realize that Microsoft was partnering with CBSE and offering AI skill programs to students in middle school, in government school, right? So that was something which was being done. I was very excited. I spoke about it in multiple places. But what we did not translate and did not see was that how this is really changing the new AI-powered skill professionals. I think that is yet to happen. We see more AI integrated into, probably in computer science colleges and technology institutions, but we need to ensure that AI becomes a mainstream in every aspect of our work. because that's the reality of an AI powered economy. Yes, there is an AI bubble. We cannot deny it, but AI is changing as we speak right now every aspect of our life. So I see a lot of money on Microsoft, which is leading with multiple peoples, right, including OpenAI and others, on AI-based innovation, and we'll find lots of problems that we've been dealing with for years and decades. Really finding a solution, we'll find some of the innovation, and as World Economic Forum has said, 40% of the new jobs, probably none of us can really define them right now because that will be those AI-powered new jobs, and I really hope, and this is where I want to come back and underline that this particular investments that are coming through India really need to look at the deep tech. I think we did miss that in the 90s because of whatever the reason was. But I think for us to really look at some of the investments that have come through on semiconductors, others, I think we
Yes.
need to see some heavy work happening in India on deep tech technologies, and investments coming through that. It should not become another, same formula of the 90s. Let's service the West. I think this has to really be on innovation, and I think with the leadership of former, Minister Rajiv Chandrasekharan and Ashwini and Prime Minister Modi, we see very clearly that there is this very clear opportunity.
Right. We'll, come back to AI in just a moment, but let's also talk about the semiconductor industry. Now, Intel's MOU with Tata and support for India's chip making mission is being called a turning point. How transformative do you think this could be for India's semiconductor ambitions and technological independence?
Neha, you remind me of a very interesting conversation with Sriram, who led the India AI from San Francisco. One of the biggest investors is put about 500 million into the India semiconductor. And, I was speaking to him on a personal conversation about 3, 4 weeks ago, or maybe a little earlier than that. He said, Ravi, do you know that in 1980s, India could have led the semiconductor and it was actually shelved by that particular government at that point? And he said, since then, I've been really knocking on India. And finally, when this India semiconductor opportunity opened up, he said, the Prime Minister Modi and the entire team grabbed it and said, we need to look at being that semiconductor manufacturer. So you're absolutely right that there is that focus. I think with Tata and many others, we are looking at more jobs, more innovation. And I think this is where opening these, be it in, I think, Greater Noida, if I'm not mistaken, and in Gujarat and other parts in Karnataka, where you're looking at manufacturing returning for the first time. And of course, one of the critical aspects of semiconductor is the critical minerals. And if you go back to the conversation, if you go back to, I think it was the BRICS summit, if I'm not mistaken, in Rio, when Prime Minister Modi made multiple stops. And the reason he was making those multiple stops was really to kind of, I would say, disrupt the Chinese monopoly of the semiconductor, sorry, of the precious metals, or the critical minerals that we talk about. And I think that's where I think India is moving. And I think the lot of criticism that earlier came with Make in India, people were not excited. People are now seeing the results. They're saying, yes, we can make in India. We've seen it in the mobile phone industry. We've seen with Apple. And I think that's the confidence that is really, I would say, an underlining factor where people are saying, we want to look at setting up manufacturing here. And of course, semiconductor is the most critical aspect of every aspect of technology today.
It certainly is. And given that many want a footprint away from China, this really should be India's moment in the sun as far as semiconductors are concerned. But coming back to the AI investments that we're looking at, Amazon plans to invest over $35 billion and Microsoft aims to train 20 million Indians in AI by 2030. In your assessment, how will these initiatives influence job creation, upskilling, and India's long-term digital workforce?
See, it's a very good question because I also co-founded the NYC Business NYC Skilling on AI institution along with two other AI co-founders. And I think we've said very clearly that if you are a small company or a big one, and on a very good statement here, that you need to look at upskilling, reskilling, and skilling to really match this new opportunity. And if I look at some of my travel, like in Latin America and Africa, nobody's been looking at those opportunities. I think that's why it's critical with the young workforce that we have and the way the government has really come up with these schemes to really empower these young people. And every time I get something, I put it on LinkedIn, on X, and say, guys, This is free. Go run after it. You can really skill yourself, upskill yourself to be ready for the new, be it the medical facility, be it pharmaceutical, be it manufacturing, be it R&D, space tech. We are looking at this completely changing the way, probably when, at least in my generation, when the computer started coming in, right? That is the level of excitement and the opportunity that we have. So yes, my only concern has always been that it'll always be, and this is when I always say, because I will say, make sure that it's not just young men running after the opportunities, also young women get special programs so that they can really embrace the STEM and the AI opportunity, so they are not left. And in India, we've seen brilliant women, in ISRO and others, where women have been there in forefront of technology. We want more women leading in India AI startups. I don't see that right now. I think that's one of the shortcomings right now.
Well, we certainly hope that it's something that's going to be addressed. But, I'm going to ask you this. We're seeing rapid foreign investment alongside a surge in local AI startups. If I have my numbers right, 74 were funded in 2024 alone. Now, how can India ensure that its domestic startup ecosystem thrives and doesn't get overshadowed by big tech, apart from, of course, the gender factor that you talked about?
Neha, you're touching a very important chord. In fact, I was working with another dear colleague in DC. We were working on a very interesting initiative on AI startup by the White House. I really think, the PMO and the Prime Minister's office can really cushion this very closely. I think one of the fundamental problems that I see right now in India is that you have one honorable minister who's fantastic. He's a minister for railways. He's the minister for information and broadcasting. He's also the information for technology. I've never understood. He's fantastic. But given the world's attention, right, and the opportunity, India needs to have a full, dedicated, minister. The country is appointing ministers of AI, and I think this is where I think India is going wrong when it comes to really from a political perspective. This needs not like a person who's fantastic. We all love Ashwini ji, right? We admire him, but I think it's unfair on him and the people of India, especially
To
young
be in charge
people,
of so
that
many
this
important
needs full
portfolios at the same
dedicated
time.
team. In fact, if I had to
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had to really say that, one recommendation to the government of India would be really, beef up your investments into the technology. Make sure you have a great cabinet and cabinet, including state ministers, right? I was in an interesting conversation. I think it was about a month ago. I was in Bangalore with Priyanka Kharge, and he's Minister for Technology and Panchayat, which was quite an interesting blend. Because in one point, I was contacted by somebody in Tripura saying that, we want to have our first village in Tripura to become AI compliant. I mean, look at that, right? So that is going to be very critical, that AI should not just be sitting in the urban centers. We want to make sure AI also is empowering rural youth and the opportunity it can bring in terms of skilling, reskilling, and upskilling them. And we really need to look at those clearly. That means you need a dedicated ministry with a very, and of course, there is, what's his name, Abhishek Singhji, who's the head of India AI, who's a fantastic leader. So we need people like him to take on a little more responsibility to drive India with and really not follow, really drive into the leadership group. And this is what I would say the CEOs are seeing. They are seeing the opportunity that India is offering, but I think we need to look at the political support and structure that needs to match this investment. And I think for me, these investments honestly are not, I mean, they're great, but they need to be much more than what we see right now.
Well, it's certainly a great start. And I think we can say quite safely that AI is going to shape our future. Will that future be built here in India? Quite possibly. Therefore, India does need to be AI ready in every way conceivable. Ravi Karkara, thank you so much for joining me on Global Pulse. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Lovely speaking to you, Neha. Thank you so much.